In this video, we are going to look at some strategic pricing policies that teams use in order to increase the revenue they collect from people coming to the events. Okay. So the table that you see in front of you, it compares between 2001 and 2016 in the different sports leagues, the NFL, MLB, NHL, and NBA. And so this shows that between 2001 and 2016, pretty much across all leagues, there was a relatively modest increase in attendance. However, the ticket prices, despite this, went way up. NFL went up over 73%, MLB 64%, NHL over 30%, NBA was almost 9%. Now, with the exception of the NBA, the increases, well, NBA and NHL actually, the increases outpaced inflation. And so, whereas the NHL was about the same and the NBA was a lot less. So this shows that, especially with the NFL and MLB, they were able to increase their ticket prices and at a faster rate than inflation, even though they were not seeing the big increases in demand for the games. So let's talk about some of the strategic pricing. So shifting demand, it's just a matter of fact that with a lot of games there is more demand for some games than others. Okay, when you talk about baseball, for example, if you are a Yankees fan, there's going to be a lot more demand for games against the Red Sox than there are for games against a team with a losing record in the National League. And so, because of that, there's going to be higher demand. More people are going to want to go to the Yankees Red Sox games than the other ones. Right? So one of the strategies that teams use is variable ticket pricing. Now, variable ticket pricing is setting ticket prices according to the expected demand for a future game. Okay, so these are set in advance. That's the important thing here. Now, what this does is the team will have lower prices for games that they expect to be low demand games and higher prices for games that they expect to be more popular. Okay. Now, the problem is there's a lot of factors that may not be known at the time. For example, if you're looking at football and there's a game that's expected to be against a non-winning team, but ends up being against a winning team, you can't really tell that in advance. Other factors such as weather come into play. So that's variable ticket pricing. Dynamic ticket pricing is similar in that it charges different prices for different games depending on the demand, but the big difference is that it's more about the ability to change prices in response to actual demand. And so as factors change that increase the demand for a game, dynamic ticket pricing will factor that in and adjust the pricing. And so it allows teams to capture extra revenue based on individual game characteristics that aren't known at the start of the season. So let's look at some examples for what could be either variable or dynamic ticket pricing. All right. So first thing to note is that we are going to assume that the marginal cost of attending a game is 0 up to the capacity of the stadium. All right, so you can't have any more people than the capacity of that stadium. All right, so you have kind of this backward L-shape marginal cost curve. Okay. So when you talk about variable ticket pricing, you're going to maximize your profits based off of different prices for the different games. And so let's say we have demand for one game by D0 and the marginal revenue is R0. And so if the team was maximizing the profit for that game alone, where the marginal revenue, because the marginal cost, will be at 30,000 tickets, and the price would be 60. So for the low revenue game, they would set a price of 60 times 30,000 tickets equals 1,000 or 1,800,000, so 1.8 million. Okay. Now, if you have the high revenue game, you would have demand up here. All right. The marginal revenue. Now, the marginal revenue is going to cross marginal cost at 40, and you would charge the price, go up to where it hits the demand curve, at 80. And so for that high demand game, you would charge $80 times the 40,000 seats, 3.2 million. And when you add the 1.8 million, 3.2 million, you get a total of 5 million. Okay? So that's what happens when you charge that variable price. Well, what happens if you charge a couple different ones? All right, so let's say you decide to go with the low price. That's $60. Well, it's $60, all right, and if that was for both games, you would have 30,000 for the low demand game, and you would have 40,000 for the high demand. All right, so you'd have 60 times 30 plus the $60 times the 40, and so you have 4.2 million, which is less than the 5 million. What if you charge the high price, so that $80? Well, $80 for the low demand game, you're going to have 20,000 tickets sold, and for the high demand game, you're going to have 40,000. All right, and so that comes out to 4.8 million, all right, which still is less than what you get with the variable. With the intermediate price, let's say instead of not 60, not 80, you went with 70. All right, so you did 70, you would have 25 for the low demand game, and you would have 40 for the high, and so it comes to 4.55 million. So the overall moral of this is that by doing the variable ticket pricing, teams are better able to capture larger revenue. Okay, so by charging different prices for the different games, they're able to get more revenue, which leads to more profit. So let's talk about a couple other here. So first we have, next we have bundling. And so when you bundle goods, if a consumer wants to buy one good, say good A, they must also buy good B. Okay, and this is common case when you talk about either season tickets, where you buy tickets for all games, or different packages where you buy a, for baseball, for example, you could buy 12 games out of the 81 home games. And so that's the way when they do that, people are not only buying the high demand games, but they're also buying the low demand, and so they're bundling them together. Now, when they do this, firms are able to take advantage of the differing demand across the products to capture some of the consumer surplus that they otherwise would not get. All right, so for those low demand games, they're able to get more people buying and at the higher price than they would had they not bought it together, had they not bundled. Right. Quantity discounts is another one. With quantity discounts, it's another way for firms to increase their profits by offering a menu of price quantities. And so, if you buy season tickets, you might pay 10% less. Okay, so it allows the producers to charge prices that reflect the intensity of the consumer's desire, and it allows the teams to take advantage of their knowledge that assuming a given quality of games, the fan's marginal utility diminishes. Okay, so regardless of how many games you go to, the additional joy you get from an additional game gets lower and lower on average. Okay. And so this is, like I mentioned, why season tickets are a lot of times sold at a discount. Price discrimination is another example. With price discrimination, you're charging different prices to different consumers based on their willingness to pay. With with tickets, you're charging different prices to the different people who will attend the games. And so this would be example student discounts. Students are not able to pay as much to go to a baseball game as people who are not students. So the teams will also often allow students to attend the games at a discount. Okay. Segmented markets is a type of price discrimination. And let's look at an example of that. So let's say you have the two groups here. And so each of these represents a demand for the two groups. And again, we're going to assume the marginal cost of 0. Oops. We're going to assume a marginal cost of 0. And so for the group that is not able to pay as much, who has lower demand, you would charge them, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, you would charge them one price, PS, and for the high demand group, you would charge them the higher price, PA. Okay. Now, two-part pricing involves two distinct segments, and with that, they need to be able to identify the groups and be able to charge them differently. And that's why, for example, students, you can identify and charge differently based on them needing to show you their student IDs, for example. Personal seat licenses are another part of two-part pricing that teams use, and this has been especially popular in the NFL. So with personal seat licenses, a person pays a fixed fee for just the rights to purchase season tickets. Right? And so this allows teams to claim the deadweight loss that would have resulted from a monopoly by getting them to pay more, and they can exert their monopoly power, allowing them to capture more consumer surplus. Now, in order for them to do this, they need to be able to know how much the average would pay for that, and so forth. So these are all just examples of strategic pricing strategies that teams use in order to increase their revenue.